Hi everybody, this is Dr. Fouladian, Nadia Fouladian, and we're going to continue the chapter 22 regarding the blood vessel structure. We talked so far about the arteries and capillaries. Now we're going to continue with the veins. So, as we discussed, veins collect blood from the tissues and return the blood to the heart. And as blood leaves the tissue capillary bed and travels to the heart, it travels through the following vessels. So the first vessel after the capillaries are venule. Then they connect to each other and make the medium-sized veins, and those ones connecting to each other and makes the large veins, and large veins are pouring the blood into the heart. So starting from the venules, these are like equivalent to the arterioles. Arterioles were the smallest of the arteries, venules are the smallest of the veins. And they collect blood from the capillaries and or have thin tunica media, may have it or may not have tunica media. As you see here, these are all the description that you have it here, discuss about them. You can go over the exact size, but you won't be asked about them. You will be asked only about the arteries as you have it. So as you see, it has an endothelium and adventitia. So it lacks most of the time, it lacks the media. Now regarding the medium-sized vein, for the medium-sized vein, the adventitia or tunica externa is the largest of the layers that it has. It contains elastic fibers, and so it uses this elastic fiber as part of pushing the blood up, because in the venous side, the blood is going to go back toward the heart mostly against the gravity. So it needs some help, and there is no heart at the beginning of that so that it pushed back the blood. All the all the pressure and everything has forced the blood up there. It has to help that besides some other. One of them is elastic fibers that, for example, we have in the medium-sized vein. Besides that, we have one-way valves, that those are other parts that are helping the blood to get back toward the heart, not the opposite way, downward, right? Like, for example, if you have a valve here and the valves are one ways like this, right? So when they are open, when they got closed, they just reach each other, right? So when the blood passes through that, gets here, right? And then after it gets there, if the blood wants to get back here, it pushes these valves and closes it. The blood can pass beyond these and gets back fully downward, right? So that's the reason of having these one-way valves. And these can be found alongside muscular arteries. So these are like these medium-sized veins are equivalent to the muscular arteries. They go side by side to each other. And the examples are the same as the muscular arteries. Over there we have radial artery, like ulnar artery and all those ones. That said that most of the arteries that we see, they were muscular artery. The same is the veins that they are going along them, right? So like radial vein, tibial vein, popliteal vein, these are all medium-sized veins. As you see all the description here, and here you see that all three layers are present, intima, media, and adventitia. And as you see, the adventitia is the biggest layer of all three here. Then after the medium-sized vein, we have let's talk about these valves more. Blood in the veins return to the heart from the lower extremity has to go against gravity, as we said. To assist in this process, many medium veins have valves, venous valves, that they are one way, and pay attention that arteries do not have valves. These valves compartmentalize the blood in veins, thus acting as one-way valve. It means that from this valve to the next valve, when blood gets and passes through one valve, then remains in that port. Then between this valve to the next valve, we can consider it as one compartment, right? So when the blood goes up and passes through this valve, it cannot back to the previous compartment, right? So that's the meaning of compartmentalize, right? And in one word, the valves prevent backflow of blood. Now, what other thing can help the blood to move up and pass through valves so that when they pass, do not get back down? What do you think? What might be? As you see here in this picture, you see the valves here. This is one valve, this is another valve, and when the blood gets here, cannot get back through these valves. When the blood gets here, won't get back through this one, right? But as you see, we have the muscles around each vein, right? These are medium-sized veins that we have all over the body. So when we go to the cadaver, you will see that between all the muscles, we have some veins, right? Those are all medium-sized veins, right? So when the muscles around them are contracting, they're pushing the wall of the vein too, right? When they push here, the blood that was inside, it moves up, because if it goes down, it cannot pass here, therefore it moves up and opens this valve here. And as soon as it gets up, it cannot get back down. Then it goes to the next compartment. Around the vein in that compartment, there are other muscles, right? Skeletal muscles. They are doing the same job. And here you're looking at the valve when it is closed and when it is open. And pay attention that these valves have the same structure as the endothelium of the veins here, or intima. So this is the other parts. So we had the valves and we have the skeletal muscle. These are two elements that are helping moving of the blood inside of the vein so that they can go against the gravity and get back toward the heart. What else do we have? There is one more thing that's helping the blood in the venous system to get back toward the heart, despite the fact that we do not have any pump at the beginning of that. I mean the actual pump that is like a heart, right? But these are all acting like a pump. In the later slides, we're going to talk about that. So regarding the large veins, adventitia is here in the large vein. Adventitia is thickest layer also and contains some smooth muscle, right? Intima and media are very thin in the large veins. Large veins do not have no valves, so valves can be found only in the medium size veins. And examples of large veins as they are getting blood back toward the heart, those are the ones that are close to the heart, right? Like superior vena cava and inferior vena cava, right? And here you see the three layer, intima, media, and adventitia. And as you see, adventitia is very thick and even it has some smooth muscles, but the intima and media are much thinner compared to that one. So regarding the mechanism that we talked about, how the blood is getting back toward the heart, blood in the vein from the lower extremity has to ascend to the heart. Blood in the vein returning to the heart from the lower extremity has to go against gravity, as we said, and the skeletal muscle of the legs help to propel the blood back to the heart. That's one factor. One-way flow is aided by the venous valve. This is the second factor. And the other things, changes in the thoracic pressure helps to move the blood through the vena cava or vena cava. Both of them together have been mentioned. Superior and inferior vena cava help the blood pass through them and back to the heart. So how thoracic pressure can help the blood back to the heart? In the thoracic cavity, what do we have? We have the lungs, and around the lung itself, we have visceral pleura, and then when it gets to the middle, it goes back toward the wall of the thoracic cavity and lines inside of the thoracic cavity as the parietal pleura. So between these two is a tiny space between the lung and its visceral pleura and the wall of the thoracic cavity and the parietal pleura. There is a space here, right? When the diaphragm moves down, so makes the space inside of the thoracic cavity gets more. And when this space gets more, this cavity that we have around the lung, that we call it pleural cavity, the pressure inside of this cavity goes down. We have more volume, less pressure. Pressure comes from when the molecules hit each other, right? When there is less space, we have the same number of the molecules over there, right? So when we have less space, those molecules hit each other more, therefore the pressure is higher. When we have the same amount of the molecule in a bigger space, what will happen? These molecules hit each other less, therefore the pressure is down now. So when the diaphragm goes down, the volume of the pleural cavity increases and the pressure inside that, did I say decrease? The volume in the pleural cavity increases and the pressure decreases, right? Now, when the pressure in the thoracic cavity goes down and decreases, it acts as a negative pressure. And this negative pressure can act as a negative pumps, like a sucking action that sucks the blood inside of the venous system all toward the thoracic cavity. When they got to the thoracic cavity, they pour into the heart, right? So they come into the vena cava, inferior vena cava and superior vena cava, and they pour into the heart. So this negative thoracic pressure that happens during inspiration. When we do inspiration, like this, the body pulls the diaphragm down. That's how we do inspiration. And this negative pressure happens, and one effect of the inspiration is this negative pressure, and it causes the return of the blood in the large veins, that we call it venous return. So venous return is the third factor that helps the return of the venous blood toward the heart. So these are three factors that you need to know, that they are helping returning of the blood from the all over against the gravity toward the heart. Now, talking about the volume of the blood that we have, how it has been distributed all over the distribution of blood. The total blood volume is distributed unevenly within the vessels of the body. It is not that the same amount of the blood that we have in the veins, in the arteries, and in the capillaries are all the same. It's not. Arteries and capillaries contain 1/3, about 30-35% of the volume of the blood, the whole volume of the blood of the body. On the other hand, veins contain about 2/3, 65-70% of the volume of the blood. So as you see, there's huge number, 2/3 of the blood are inside of the vein. Veins are more distensible because, as you have seen, they have a larger volume, right? Based on blood pressure, a vein can expand about 8 times as much as a parallel artery, right? Therefore, it can have a huge amount of the blood. Therefore, the venous system can act as a reservoir, act as blood reservoir, right? And the veins are called capacitant vessels because they have a huge capacity. They can expand and accommodate more blood when it is needed. So in general, the veins act as a blood reservoir. Whenever body needs more blood to get and circulate in the arterial system, it can come from the veins and get into the circulation more. And we have the venoconstriction. Veno refers to the venous side. Venoconstriction is the constrictions of the veins. So venoconstriction of the veins shifts blood toward the arterial side of the circulation whenever it is needed. So in this pie chart, you see that it shows the distribution of the blood all over the body. So first things that you see that the systemic venous system has about 64% of the blood inside of that you can go over the like granule 25%, medium size, and large veins about 21% is medium size. Large venous networks, that's the medium size vein, 21%, and large veins about 18%, right? Totally 64%. Then for the arterioles, the pulmonary circulation, so this is the whole pulmonary circulation, all the blood that we have, arterial capillaries and veins all together makes only 9% of the blood, right? The heart by itself has about 7% of the blood, and systemic arterial system makes about 13% of the blood. So when you compare these, let's imagine count the heart as the arterial side too, is about 20% all compared to the 64%, right? And systemic capillaries make about 7% of the blood, right? So these are whole the picture of the whole things, and you don't need to memorize these numbers. The only thing that you need to know is that the venous sides makes about 65-70%, and the arterial side and capillaries all together makes about 30-35% of the blood in there. So blood vessels, as we discussed at the beginning, can be divided into two circuits, pulmonary circuit and systemic circuit. For the pulmonary circuit, that composed of the arteries and veins that transport blood between the heart and the lung here remains the gas exchange part of the heart, that they are alveolar, right? They are small air sacs, which one is called alveolus, and altogether we called alveolar, and the air that comes from the outside at the end gets into these sacs, the air sacs. The air is inside them, we call it air sacs. And around them, we have a bunch of a network, a huge network of the capillary around each alveolus. Therefore, the exchange of the gases is done between these air that we have in the alveolus and the blood that is passing through the capillaries from around the alveolus, right? That's the job of the pulmonary circuit, right? Blood in pulmonary arteries and veins travel relatively short distance because it just goes between the heart and lung. It doesn't go like from the heart all over to the end of the digits in the lower extremity or even the upper extremity. Like it goes very short distance. Therefore, it doesn't need much of pressure behind that to go to the end of this distance. And generally, pulmonary circuit is a low pressure circuit, right? So the wall of the vessels, like arteries around, doesn't have much of the pressure, and the right heart, right ventricle, doesn't have to come against a high pressure either. So generally, is a low pressure circuit. On the other hand, systemic circuit is composed of arteries and veins that transport oxygenated blood between the heart and all other tissues. Because you remember in the pulmonary circuit, the deoxygenated, or better to say less oxygenated blood from the right ventricle goes through the pulmonary trunk, then goes to the both lung, and then oxygenation is done between the alveoli and the capillary around them. And then after those pulmonary capillaries, when they continue, goes to the venous side, they have lots of oxygen. And all those venule, pulmonary venule, they become all at the end becomes pulmonary vein, and pulmonary vein that get back to the left atrium, now they have lots of oxygen. So from the left atrium, the blood that has lots of oxygen in that, it gets into the left ventricle. Now from the left ventricle, blood, it pumps into the aorta and all its branches, and it spreads all over the body. That is the part of the systemic circulation. So we transport oxygenated blood between the heart and all other tissues. Blood in systemic arteries and veins often travel longer distance, as you all know. It may go all the way to the end of the foot, may go all the way to the end of the hands, right? Just as we are here, I like to make one thing clear, that when we're talking about the lung in the pulmonary circuit, we're only talking about the gas exchanging part of the lung, like those alveoli. Lung itself, as any other organ of the body, it has some needs regarding the oxygen and nutrient itself too, right? So for the lung, we actually have a dual circulation. What does it mean? It means that the vessels that goes toward the lungs are pulmonary vessels, pulmonary trunk, and then pulmonary, right pulmonary artery, left pulmonary artery, and they branch, goes all the way to the capillary, pulmonary capillaries, and then after exchange of the gas with the alveolus, they connect to each other, makes bigger vein. At the end, 4 pulmonary veins get back to the left atrium. This is one circulation, pulmonary circulation. But from the systemic circulation, from the branches of the aorta, from the thoracic aorta, we have branches that are separating and going to the lung too. We call those ones as bronchial. Bronchial arteries. And also they have bronchial vein too that get back to the inferior one, right? So those bronchial arteries, what's their job? They go to the tissue of the lung. Again, as any organ, like the tissue of the lung, it has some some epithelium, have some connective tissue, elastic tissue, and all the things that we have, they have some need. They need some glucose, they need some oxygen, and all those ones. And they have to come from the systemic circulation as they are going to any other part of the body. They have to supply the lung too. So this is how the lung has a dual circulation, pulmonary vessels and bronchial vessels. Bronchial vessels are separating from the aorta and bringing the nutrient and gas and exchanging all the waste and the carbon dioxide too. And at the end, bronchial veins getting back to the right atria, to the systemic veins. So I just want to mention this one. Now there are functional and structural differences between the vessels in the two circuits. Blood pressure in the pulmonary circuit is lower than in the systemic circuit, as we discussed, and walls of the pulmonary arteries are thinner than the walls of the systemic arteries. Why? Simply because they do not need to pressure hard against them. It's just a short distance, low pressure blood goes, and we can work without too much pressure. Now the distribution of arteries and veins is the same on the left side of the body as it is on the right side of the body, except for vessels connected to the atria and ventricle. They are a little bit different, right? So a single vessel will have different name. So regarding the, just to emphasizing what we said about the vessels that are connecting to the atria and ventricles, we have discussed that before in the heart when we talk, right? For the right atrium, we have the vena cava coming to the right atrium. For the left ventricle, the pulmonary veins going. And again, remember that the vessels that go to the atria, to the upper chambers that are atria, they are veins, right? And then for the ventricle, from the right ventricle, pulmonary trunk goes up to the lung, and for the left ventricle, aorta going out, right? So that's how they are different. For the rest of that, after that, they are the same. And one more thing, that the arterial side, also aorta, is on the right side, and also the return of that inferior vena cava goes toward the left side, and it's very sorry, I did it reverse. Aorta is located on the left side. I'm showing on the left side and then saying right side. Aorta is coming from the left ventricle and goes toward the left and going down. So aorta is always located on the left side, right? And inferior vena cava is going up in the right side of the body and then goes back into the right atrium. So always remember that one. When you go over the cadaver, you differentiate these two from their side, right? Aorta on the left side, inside of the abdomen. Abdominal aorta is on the left side and the inferior vena cava on the right side. Now, the other thing is that a single vessel will have different names according to the specific anatomical boundaries. What does it mean? It means that, like, for example, the branches of the aortic arch, right? One branch is the subclavian artery, right? Subclavian artery, according, that's one long vessel, goes from near the heart, goes all the way to the end of the digits. But we're not just calling that subclavian. When it goes under clavicle, we call it subclavia. When it goes under the armpit, we call it axillary. When it goes to the brachial area, we call it brachial artery. When it goes to the, then it branches to two. When it goes to the forearm, if it's on the side of the radial, we call it radial artery. If it's on the side of the ulnar, we call it ulnar artery, right? Or when it goes to the hand toward the digits, we call it digital arteries, right? So for many of the vessels, naming is regional So region by region. Therefore, I put them on the different regions, and I put all those ones in the lab, so you can refer to all those PowerPoints and just follow all the vessels, how we name them different in different regions, right? That's what it means by the anatomical boundaries, right? Arteries and veins often anastomose, so it means that you already have seen that the atriovenous, arteriovenous anastomosis, that's when the arteries and veins are anastomosing to each other, so they are not just dependent to one. It is like a U-turn that you can go at the end of one road and make a U-turn, but that's not only at the end. In the middle also you have some U-turn options. So just in case the end is not working or for some needs. So the other things regarding the pulmonary circuit. Blood on the right side of the heart enters the pulmonary circuit, as you already know. Oxygen-poor blood leaves the right ventricle by passing through the pulmonary valve or pulmonic valve, as you already know, enters the pulmonary trunk, then enters the left pulmonary artery and right pulmonary artery, and then arrives at the lung to draw off carbon dioxide and pick up the oxygen, right? Then oxygenated blood enters to the heart via the pulmonary veins, the four pulmonary veins, two from each side, and all four pulmonary veins enter the left atrium of the heart. So that's the pulmonary circulation and its function, right? And here you see that between the heart and lung. So from the right, this has been simplified so that you can see that, that in reality the pulmonary trunk and aorta crossing over each other, but still their function is the same as has been shown here. Blood that has come from the right atrium to the right ventricle, now from the right ventricle passes through the pulmonary trunk, and then hasn't been shown the two branches, there's just after that pulmonary arteries, and then they branch. At the end, they go at the level of all the alveoli, and they exchange all the gases, oxygen. They get oxygen from the lung, and they give the carbon dioxide toward the alveoli, as we discussed before. These are all according to the concentration and the concentration gradient of each gas between the alveolus and the capillaries, right? So after that, the blood that now is full of oxygen gets into the vein, pulmonary vein, the small venules, then bigger, and then finally the biggest pulmonary veins that four of them all get back to the left atrium. So that's the pulmonary circulation. And here is also a good picture to show the systemic circulation from the left ventricle. Now you have a blood that is full of oxygen. It gets into the aorta and then continues to all the branches. Like if this is the aortic arch, the branches, three branches that are separating is just simplified as one, and they go on and supplies the head and neck, including the brain and the upper limb. And then the rest of the aorta descends and go through the thoracic aorta, abdominal aorta, and then continues to the lower extremity and supplies all these other organs. At the level of each organ, the blood vessels get smaller, and gets capillaries, and the exchange of the material is done. So just here, pay attention that when they, for example, when they go into the kidney, all those blood vessels that they get small and make some branches of the capillaries. Besides that, we're going to talk about that later. But just know that one part in the digestive system, when they got very small, is not just they are supplying these organs, also they can absorb all the nutrient that now have been digested and is going to be absorbed to the blood toward the blood vessels and then continue their way. That later we are going to talk about that they pass through the liver and then get back to the circulation. So it was just a simplified of all the both circuit, and here it's just showing that how the blood from the right ventricle gets to the pulmonary trunk, then to the pulmonary arteries, left pulmonary artery and right pulmonary artery. And as you see, have been shown blue here as symbolizing that this blood that comes from the right ventricle has less oxygen. Then it spreads along the lung the same way that the branches of the trachea that is coming into the lung, they are spreading, getting smaller and more scattered, right? So all those ones, these vessels also branching like a tree, and then go small, very small, makes this capillary. Each capillary is around an alveolus, as we said. Like this is an alveolus, this is the capillary around that, and at this place they're going to exchange the gas. And as you see, the air that has come from the outside gets into the trachea and then spreads, goes all the way to this alveolar. It is now full of oxygen. So the concentration of the oxygen here in the alveolus is higher than the concentration of the oxygen in the capillary, pulmonary capillary that is passing around that alveolus. Therefore, the oxygen moves according to the diffusion, according to its concentration gradient. Oxygen moves to the capillary, pulmonary capillary. On the other hand, the blood that has come here all the way from all the body get into the left ventricle. Now from the left ventricle goes and spread through the pulmonary arteries and its branches and finally gets to the pulmonary capillary. It's full of carbon dioxide. Therefore, this concentration of the carbon dioxide here in the capillary is much higher than the concentration of the carbon dioxide that has come from the outside, from the air, to reach here inside of the alveolus. Therefore, the carbon dioxide moves from the capillary toward the alveolus. And in the next exhale, this carbon dioxide goes back all the way into the trachea and gets out here through the nose. Right? So it just shows all this relation between heart and lung in detail. That's a very good picture to show the alveolus and capillary and the connection between the heart and lung. So regarding the systemic arteries, that blood on the left side of the heart enters the systemic circulation, right, as we discussed. Oxygenated blood leaves the left ventricle by passing through the aortic valve, enters the ascending aorta. At the base of the ascending aorta are the branches of the coronary vessels that I showed you in chapter 21. At the end of the 21, we had a good picture that was showing the right coronary artery and left coronary artery, that they are just right after the aortic valve when the ascending aorta starts at the very beginning. So then after the ascending aorta, that goes to the aortic arch, and from the aortic arch, blood branches into numerous vessels. So we already talked about these ones. Now let's see a few branches of the systemic arteries. From the aortic arch, we have some branches. The first one from the right side is called brachiocephalic trunk. We call it trunk because it's bigger than the other two, right? Then the right common is when brachiocephalic trunk goes up a little bit, then it gets two branches. It makes the right common carotid artery and right subclavian artery. And as we already said, brachiocephalic trunk is on the right side. Yeah. Then after brachiocephalic trunk, we have two more branching of the aortic arch. The middle one is left common carotid artery, and the most left side is left subclavian artery. Left common carotid artery goes straight up toward the left side, is this side, left side of the head and neck, and including the brain, right? Then left subclavian, it passes under the left clavicle and then continues all the way to the left heart. The same way and the same job is in the right side is with the brachiocephalic trunk that we finally gets the right common carotid and right subclavian artery. Right common carotid artery supplies the right side of the head and neck and the right side of the brain, and right subclavian artery supplies the right arm. Right? Then aortic arch continues as the descending aorta, and descending aorta continues down until it gets to the abdomen. It passes through the diaphragm and gets to the abdomen. So the whole descending aorta, one part is inside of the thoracic cavity, we call it thoracic aorta. The rest of that is in the abdominal cavity, we call it abdominal aorta. So sometimes they call it thoracic descending aorta or abdominal descending aorta, that both of them are descending aorta. We can just name it thoracic aorta and abdominal aorta, right? But just know both of them are part of descending aorta. So when it gets to the end of the aorta, then at the level of the ilium almost, the aorta is branching, right? And also at each level, after we said that ascending aorta, it has the coronaries, right and left coronary artery. Aortic arch has these ones, right? Brachiocephalic trunk, left common carotid artery, and left subclavian arteries. And descending aorta, from the thoracic aorta, we have lots of branches, and from the abdominal aorta, we have lots of branches. So if I go further and there is no slide, this will be disrupted. So I like to give you some explanation to make sure that we are not disconnecting from the video here. Make sure that you are going and see all the PowerPoints that I put for every branch. Like here, for the head and neck area, right? For all these branches, right, common, in general, common carotids, but common carotids, we call them common because later they're going to, no, I think that we have a few more, so let me go over the answer. That's here. So here we have the aorta, ascending aorta, aortic arch, that you see the brachiocephalic, left common carotid and left subclavian. Then we have descending, the thoracic part, thoracic aorta, and then abdominal aorta. And this here, we see that the aorta is branching, therefore is not aorta anymore. This is the end of the aorta. We call it as a bifurcation. Whenever a vessel becomes double, it forks, we call it bifurcation, right? So from here, we have common iliac, because they are going to the iliac, common iliac arteries, right side and left side. Then later, this one makes one external iliac artery, one internal iliac artery, and then external iliac artery goes all the way and supplies all the lower extremity. That you have them, I put them, all the vessels that go into the lower extremity separately as the vessels of the lower extremity, right? The internal iliac artery goes and supplies most of the structures that we have in the pelvis here. Like, for example, in the female, we have uterus, we have ovary, we have the urinary bladder in both sex, and all the other things that we have, muscles, whatever we have here, is mostly supplied by the internal iliac artery. And pay attention that for every artery that you have a correlated or corresponding vein that is getting back alongside that, and most of the time it has the same name, and getting back here. So for those ones that are coming back from the lower extremity all the way, when they get here, they make the right common iliac vein and left common iliac vein, and those two pour into the inferior vena cava that goes on the right side of the aorta up, and finally when passes through the diaphragm goes into the right side of the right atrium. It goes to the right atrium, right? So for each one of these, we go in more detail in the lab, and you have the list of all the arteries that you need to focus more in the lab. But pay attention that you need to know those vessels for the lecture purpose. And here you see that branches of the aortic arch, right? We said that we have brachiocephalic trunk, and after a short length, it makes the right common carotid artery and right subclavian artery. Each common carotid artery, after it goes a little bit, it makes external carotid artery and internal carotid artery. That's why we call the beginning as common, right? So the external carotid arteries are smaller branches, goes over the surface external of the head and neck, and internal carotid artery continues and goes toward the brain and supplies the brain. Pay attention from the subclavian here. I think we have the next slide that it shows this part better too, but just let me show this one as we have it here too. From the subclavian on each side also we have a branch that we call it vertebral artery. Goes up, and also that one supplies the posterior part of the brain. Then each subclavian artery goes under clavicle and then continues toward the arms. As I told you, this area is called subclavian. When it gets into the shoulder area, it's called axillary. When it gets to the brachial, it calls the brachial artery, and at the level of the elbow, then it becomes radial artery on the radial side, ulnar artery on the medial side, and finally makes some arches in the hand and makes the digital arteries. So that was a brief, but you have all the lists and all the complete explanation on the PowerPoints, and you go and look at them. Now again, this is just repeating what I said. The aorta, we have ascending aorta, begins at the aortic valve. Left and right coronary arteries are the branches of the ascending aorta that are at the base of the ascending aorta. Aortic arch that forms an arch going toward the left and posterior side of the heart. And branching off the aortic arch are three elastic arteries, and the branches of the aortic arch are radiocephalic trunk that, as we said, it gives rise to the right common carotid artery, right subclavian artery. That right subclavian supplies blood to the right arm, right side of the heart, brain, and spinal cord. And sorry, it is just a mistake. It's just regarding the whole brachiocephalic trunk, because subclavian goes to the arm, right arm, but the rest of these parts are from the right common carotid. And left common carotid artery supplies blood to the left side of the head and brain, and left subclavian artery supplies blood to the left arm, brain, and spinal cord. So this brain and spinal cord of the subclavian artery refers to the vertebral artery that is separating from the subclavian artery. And then here you are looking at, what is it? What do you see? You see the ascending aorta, then you see the aortic arch, and then descending aorta, and the three branches of the ascending aorta, brachiocephalic trunk, left common carotid and left subclavian. Pay attention how bigger is brachiocephalic compared to other because it's going to supply the right common carotid and right subclavian. So this is an angiogram. And this angiogram, we just put a dye in the circulation. When it goes in one part, we can take a picture and see that if there is any obstruction on any parts of the vessel or whatever else, it might cause any problem, right? So you see the path of the blood inside of the blood vessels. So this is an aortic angiogram, as you see that here. And these are the parts of the subclavian. After this part, you have the subclavian artery and all its branches toward the arm here. And also you see the beginning of the vertebral artery that is going toward the brain. And yes, here is a good picture that is showing the common. This is the brachiocephalic, then it makes common carotid. It's shown on the right side. Common carotid artery, then you have it, this one that goes toward the outside. This is external carotid artery, and the one that goes toward the inside is internal carotid artery. So besides this internal carotid artery that's going to supply the brain, when we go toward the brain in chapter 16, we talk more about the blood vessels that are supplying, but just here learn that internal carotid arteries supplying many parts of the brain. And besides that, we see that on the beginning of the subclavian artery on each side, as this side has been shown, you have a vessel vertebral artery that is going on the side of the cervical vertebra and going up all the way and then enters into the brain and takes part in the supplying of the posterior side of the brain, circulation of the posterior side of the brain. And pay attention to the location of the subclavian artery that passes under clavicle but over the first rib, which is sandwiched between these two. And also later when we go to the, we already talked about the cervical vertebra, and we already have seen these holes on the each cervical vertebra. You remember on the lateral side of each cervical vertebra we have a hole that we call it transverse foramen. And now you see that what is passing through the transverse foramen, that is the vertebral artery. Good. So I believe this is the last slide from this chapter, and then the rest of the slides are put separate. They do not need much of the explanation, just regarding the location of the vessels, and you have the list of the vessels that you need to know. Just go over the vessels and look at the pictures and make sure that you realize that where each one is located. And before leaving, just pay attention that the axillary artery, right, starts after the clavicle. When the subclavian artery passes under the clavicle, then after that is called axillary. And that's the end. So have a great time and see you next.